It's 5:30. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Please, if you are able, stand and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next I would look for a motion to approve our agenda. Jim.
I move adoption of the agenda as provided.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Jim, seconded by Nimal. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, same sign? All right, thank you very much. We have approved our agenda. Next, we will move on to the recognition of the audience. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but it is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. This evening, 2 speakers have signed up to address the board. Each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. I will now call our first speaker to the podium, who is Devin Stachinsky.
Devin Stachinsky, HMR. Just a couple of questions that got my brain going looking at your agenda for this evening. For Memo 60, how come you guys still don't actually put a reason for your rating? I mean, it's still there, and all I see is 9, 0. You know, we're all compliant, but nothing ever gets put down for any of those. For Memo 61, a couple questions. Is this for all of the stairs for the building? Just the outside, front and back? All the emergency exits? It's not clear which stairs and ramp are going to be changed and by how much, considering most of the concrete looks good, but the metal's all bad. So I'm just curious about that. Also, is this part of the long list of deferred maintenance, or is this a special project that's bumped up in the queue? For Memo 64, I'm curious just how much land does Fargo Public Schools have that doesn't have buildings on it? I know you guys have 25 different buildings across 2 states, and but I didn't know you guys own that piece of ground south of Davies. I suppose I should look into that a little further. Anne Marie, I'll be asking you for that probably tomorrow. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Paul Moore.
Paul Moore, Fargo. Memo 58, I had a question about the grants. Not that I don't think we should go over as much money as we possibly can. My question would be is why don't we do it for things that are short term, like the sidewalks and stuff that he asked about? We're putting it into salaries and benefits, basically along the lines of what happened with the budget. You end up, giving people hope that they're gonna have jobs, but sometimes a lot of these grants are just short term, and then you have to somehow transition it into the regular piece of the budget. And I just don't understand why we don't just find those projects that are short term anyway and just go with that. And then one other thing that happened, it was today, actually, and so it was a little underprepared. But I went to or virtually, went to the Northern Plains Ethics Institute meeting, guest speaker. Heard a lot of good things, heard a lot of things I have questions about, and I got, like I said, not a lot of time to prepare and get organized, but some things that I liked and some things that I didn't. Like, for example, we overused the word equity. That was kind of an interesting thing to hear. I agree. I like how we don't want teachers to lower their expectations based upon student, and I'm just going to say issues, because there was lots of different things mentioned there, but that the teachers need to keep their expectations high, and I think that's true because I've seen teachers who keep the expectations high, and the children seem to respond to that. I mean, I think there are certain students that actually don't like being coddled. They want to be challenged, and they appreciate it sometimes. Some other things I need to look into, like decorum. What does decorum mean? Looks like every time that this kind of came up, we went for widening and not narrowing necessarily on what things need to be, and basically based on maybe student ideas. A discipline idea, not to base it on repairing a harm and not deterring it in the future, that didn't make sense to me. Clock's ticking, go to the end. Our system produces gaps. Okay, good to acknowledge, but then there's the 5 why thing. But the thing that I would, as a business person, we've learned a lot about 5 whys. It's the same principle that we use. Always being sure that you don't come in with a preconceived notion, and then your 5 whys actually, you maybe sometimes get surprised at what your answers might be. And then the last one I guess I'm going to be able to get to, sorry, rotating teachers so that the most difficult students have the best teachers. And my question is, how does that not do burnout? Because burnout, I got 15 seconds, I'm gonna use it. Using your best people all the time to do the worst jobs, trust me, again, as having done leadership and management for 30 years, that burns those people out.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our report section of the agenda, starting with legislative reports from Robin.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing my time to update the board. Special session continues. I think I'm up to date on reporting on those current events, and it's been a busy day, so no reason to reiterate what has already been communicated. Regarding the interim, I have had an item that was brought to my attention. The Judiciary Committee meets Tuesday, November 7th. One of the items that has been listed is, agenda items is 11 a.m., presentation regarding the state's definition, criteria, and report for persistently dangerous schools, the state's suspension and expulsion data, and the armed first responder criteria and status. So I encourage you all to watch that. I will try to send a video link as soon as I can. Other than that, I think I'm up to date on all the other reports because it's been busy. And thank you for your grace, everybody. I'm learning as we go here in this special session because this is somewhat, it is unprecedented for what we're going through right now. So thank you.
Thank you so much for keeping us updated. We really appreciate it, especially when it was a surprise session. So thank you. Next, we'll move on to our FEA reports.
Thank you, President Birkeland and members of the board. A few kind of miscellaneous items and then a longer discussion on business item A, memo number 65. First, as Robin alluded to, we, along with our partners at North Dakota United, are closely monitoring the special legislative session and any initiated ballot measures that might come this summer as well, which might reduce our capacity to serve the students of Fargo Public Schools. We will stand ready to partner with any individual, organization, entity, or elected official to support and defend public education for students in our state. Last week on Wednesday, we experienced our first early out day in the district. And I would just encourage you, if you have opportunities to interact with teachers or students, to get a pulse on kind of what that experience was like for both teachers and students. We are awaiting a final document on the contract to come down from the district office. My understanding is that that's to come here this weekend, perhaps, and we will then work as an FEA committee to expeditiously review that as quickly as possible to ensure that it is accurate down to the letter to the agreements that were negotiated, and then hold a membership vote on that. Assuming that that membership vote comes back affirming the contract, ratifying it, I would then ask the board to try to schedule a special meeting for November 1st. That's to allow for the November paychecks to reflect the new agreement, again, presuming that the membership has been able to ratify it by that time. I had a conversation with Seth just prior to this meeting where we talked about the timeline that we're on trying to get that to happen. So I think we're both committed to trying to do what we can to make it happen by the November paycheck. There are some nuances and some difficulties. It's a tight timeline, but if we can make that happen, I think we all would appreciate being able to move beyond that. Lastly, on business item A, memo number 65. At the special meeting of the board on October 10th, a motion was made to deny a grievance brought forth in accordance with the negotiated agreement. The motion to deny failed. After the vote, President Birkeland states during the meeting, quote, "Motion fails, and I believe that the grievance has been upheld," end quote. She then begins a sentence saying, "Is that," and kind of trails off, presumably saying, "Is that correct?" as she turns to look in the direction of legal counsel, which that night included Ms. Tara Bradner, General Counsel for Fargo Schools, and Mr. Seth Thompson, external legal counsel, brought in for this particular discussion. There is then 15 seconds of silence while Ms. Bradner and Mr. Thompson whisper in discussion with one another. These two attorneys do not object to the affirmative declaration President Birkeland and attorney herself had made. They do not indicate that there is need for additional discussion. They do not ask for additional time to sort the matter out. They turn back toward the president and offer nothing. No individual board member uses that time to object to the affirmative declaration either. Furthermore, the board's parliamentarian, who was seated next to Mr. Thompson, did not object to the affirmative declaration President Birkeland had made. There was universal clarity in the room that if a motion to deny a grievance had failed, the board had thereby chosen to uphold the grievance. Tonight, the board is going to revisit this matter. In a courtesy call to notify me of this agenda item, President Birkeland indicated that the agenda item is not to redo the argument. It's simply to have a vote. I discussed with her that there were two board members, Robin Nelson and Jim Johnson, who were absent at the original meeting, and how this is problematic to bring up the vote at a future meeting. I do not believe this is the intent of the grievance process as laid out in the contract, and I believe it has potential negative consequences for future grievances and future discussions made in this room. Specific to tonight, it is improper to allow members who did not hear the discussion on the issue now vote on that issue. I was assured by President Birkeland that Robin and Jim would watch the recording of the arguments. However, quite frankly, none of us have a way to verify that was completed. And even so, watching the recording doesn't allow these board members to have an opportunity to get their questions answered and to probe the thoughts of their fellow board members and the attorneys who presented the arguments from both sides. For that, you have to be present. Here we have two board members who didn't attend the original discussion where the public can observe them doing their work, now being given an opportunity to weigh in on an issue that everybody in the room at the time believed was already settled. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. We'll move on to our administration report from Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. Nothing to offer in terms of superintendent's report today. I do believe that many board members will be joining administration at the North Dakota School Boards Association Conference at the end of this week as well. So if there's any questions regarding logistics for that, please let Anne Marie or I know. Per the new model decided at governance, we have enclosed in your board packet a administration's report on our grant revenues and over the last couple of years, or last year actually, and Jackie's here with Stacy and Amy as well to answer any questions as it indicates in your memo if you have any questions on that report.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions on the report or comments? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Oh, yes.
Well, I have a comment. I want to thank you for all your efforts. Each and every one of these dollars means a lot to the district. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our consent agenda, I would look for a motion. Yes, Jim?
I'll move adoption of the consent agenda as provided.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Jim and seconded by Nikki. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you very much. Motion passes and consent agenda is approved. We will next move on to the business portion of the evening, starting with item A, which comes to us through the Fargo Board of Education memo number 65. You all received this when the agenda was posted. I guess I would like to start by offering an apology to the board. I am sorry that I did not appreciate what a failed motion to deny meant and that we have to revisit this, and so I'm sorry. But with that, I would look for a motion so we can start our discussion. Yes, Jim?
I'm going to move that we uphold Dr. Gandhi's original position regarding the grievance from the FEA.
Second.
All right, thank you. Moved by Jim and seconded by Nikki. Any discussion? Yes.
I want to assure everybody that I did watch the recording, and I do feel that I do not have any further questions about the process. So I watched it multiple times just to make sure I understood everybody's positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Other discussion? Yes, Greg?
So I appreciate that we're not going to try and, I guess, for lack of a better word, relitigate the entire special meeting that we had previously, but I would like to point out that I think it was fairly obvious where the board voted to stand on the issue at that time, and we're only holding another vote because of a minor technicality, and I don't think it was unclear what the board's position was, and we should be voting tonight just to clean up the technical problem.
Yes, Dr. Gandhi?
Thank you. As the board considers this motion or any motion related to this grievance, I'm not going to share anything that would potentially, using Greg's terms, relitigate the issue, but just like I had shared prior to the last board motion, the board's decision, regardless of which it will need to result in some guidance to administration based on this interpretation, specifically if the FEA's motion is upheld, or if this motion fails and then the FEA's motion is upheld in terms of school psychologists for the purposes of collective bargaining being considered classroom teachers, then we, administration would need to know the following, just so we can continue with our operations. And we need to know some of those answers now because this impacts what the work our HR does and some other pieces. So if the teacher contract applies to school psychologists, should the elementary and secondary school psychologists also be bound by the varying workday definitions within the contract, the 7.5 hours at the elementary and 8 hours? Does this also mean, looking at just that all the school psychologists are, that often work on based on a student need scheduled for testing students as they go through the child find IEP process? That's a more of an independent scheduling piece worked within administration, not a structured day like a classroom teacher. But does this mean that now they are still entitled to the same level of preparation and planning time as classroom teachers in the provisions of the contract? Lastly, a critically important question would be, actually not, second to last question would also be the special education stipend that the negotiation committees have worked on. Would that apply to the school psychologist? And then also, how would the board like administration to pursue the recollection of the new salary that was given to school psychologists up to this point, and what does that look like? Those are operational questions that we are being asked, that we need board guidance on based on the decision that you may make, and so we can kind of know how to operate as well. The other question that I would also ask is, should the board, based on what how they interpret the contract dispute or the grievance interpretation, what does that mean for the remedy that is provided as well? Like I shared at the previous meeting, administration's goal is to represent the staff. And if it's to represent the staff interest so we can value our staff appropriately. And if that's done through the collective bargaining process, because school psychologists are considered classroom teachers in the board's opinion, then I would still advocate, just like I said that I would that night, for that collective bargaining process to not deny the right market adjusted salary schedule for the school psychologists, because that's why we're here. We had 8 out of 8 school psychologists within this district seek a remedy. So I still think that the board, if they think that the language means that they're classroom teachers, can still maybe potentially say, let them bargain with the collective bargaining agreement moving forward, but maybe work with FEA to say, can they uphold that salary? Because at the end of the day, isn't the purpose and the spirit of collective bargaining to represent the interest of the employees? And I don't understand why those two things have to be mutually exclusive. So administration needs the answer to those, so then we can operate accordingly. So just think about that. We'd be seeking those answers sooner rather than later, depending on how the vote goes.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Yes, Jim?
I just want to share a couple of thoughts for the reason I made the motion. First of all, I personally believe the statutory definition of a teacher that we need to bargain with does not include our school psychologists, because they're not primarily classroom teachers. So that is the legal issue in my mind. There is no capacity that I'm aware of in state statute or board policy that would allow any one member, including the president, to make an affirmative declaration of anything. We need to either accept the motion on the floor, modify it, or reject it. And if it gets rejected, we need a motion that would uphold the FEA position, and we need to pass that. That's the affirmative action that has to happen tonight, one of the two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments or questions? Okay, Anne Marie, would you mind reading Jim's motion again, please?
That the board uphold Dr. Gundy's original position on the grievance from the FEA.
All right, does anyone have any lack of clarity about what a yes or no vote would mean? Okay, thank you. Anne Marie, would you please call the roll?
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
No.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Berkland.
No, motion passes. Dr. Gandhi's original decision on the grievance has been upheld. All right, we will move on to business item B. Offer to purchase the district property, and it appears we may need to move into executive session if anybody has a motion to do so. Yes, Jim?
Well, I'm looking to Dr. Gandhi. Do I need executive session?
Yes, Jim.
I'm going to move that we go into executive session under North Dakota Century Code 44-04-19.1, paragraph 9, to discuss possible purchase negotiations for property.
Yes, or second, sorry.
Thank you. All right, moved by Jim, seconded by Seth. Do we have any discussion on the motion to go into executive session? All right, Anne Marie, would you please call the roll?
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Now, yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, motion passes. We will be moving into executive session. Should we be staying in this room, or will there be things projected that we need to see? We can stay here? Okay. Great. All right, well, we will just prepare the room and then get ourselves into executive session. 37, we are out of executive session. I would look for a motion. Yes, Jim?
I'd like to move that we reject the offer that we heard for our property in downtown Fargo.
Second.
All right, thank you. Moved by Jim, seconded by Seth. Any discussion? All right, thank you. Hearing none. Anne Marie, would you please call the roll?
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, motion passes. We will move on to our next business item, which comes to us through memo number 63, the operational, oh, yes, Robin?
I would like to make a motion that the 23-24 operational plan be approved as provided.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Robin, seconded by Tracy. Any discussion? Or questions? Okay, if there aren't any, when you're ready, could you call the roll, please?
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, motion passes. All right, moving on to our final business item for the evening, which comes to us through memo number 64 regarding the easement approval. I would look for a motion so we can start discussion. Yes, Jim?
I'll move that we authorize the execution of the right-of-way easement with Cass County Electric Cooperative as indicated in memo 64.
Second.
Thanks. I think I heard Robin first, moved by Jim and seconded by Robin. Any discussion? Or questions about the easement? Okay. As soon as you've reshuffled our names, Anne Marie, could you please call the roll?
My sheet shuffles them
Are
for
you
me.
okay?
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, motion passes. All right, moving along to board reports. Let's start with Dr. Newman, if you want to do your reports.
Yeah, thank you. Not much to report. Planning has met, governance has met. Not directly related to my FPS, but germane to my education advocacy. I've spent the last 5 days in Washington, D.C., meeting with the Council of School Health and doing all things public education and policy and advocacy. And I sent Jackie and Dr. Gandhi some of my talks that I attended. It was very good about ESSER funding and such. So I learned a lot and grateful for the experience. And I think with all of us, will be attending the NDSBA conference in Bismarck later this week on Thursday and Friday. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. And your trip sounded really great, so thanks for sharing that. Jamal?
Fun.
I have nothing to report besides I'm a married woman. Thank you.
Congratulations, yay. It's a hard act to follow.
It kind of is. I don't know. I'll try. I'll do my best. Well, on the 11th, we sat down with the FEA and have come to a tentative agreement on salary for 2 years and teacher workday. Following that meeting, there was a couple of cells that that we overlooked that weren't correct. And last Wednesday on the 18th, Ryan and Grant and Greg and I met for about a half an hour to just make those minor adjustments to those few cells so that we could be correct in our tentative agreement. And we now are just waiting for the final draft of the contract to go through and read it and wait for FEA to ratify so we can do the same. So looking forward to a 2-year deal. And within that, I had a planning meeting as well. So
Yes, thank you so much. All right, Robin.
I already reported in the legislative report. The only thing that I did prior to or after the last meeting was I served as Dr. Gandhi's and Attorney Bradner's proxy at the Chamber's 2023 Cass County Leader Roundtable that talked about special session and some upcoming or expected ballot measures.
Great, thank you so much. Jim?
Well, I was at governance and planning since our last meeting. We kind of already heard this evening what planning was dealing with. I too will be in Bismarck, and although this really does not fall under board reports, I can't keep it in any longer. I'm going to be a grandpa come the end of
Oh,
April.
congratulations.
Oh,
Yay.
Emma?
Yay. That's so exciting. Great. Yeah, that's amazing. Nikki?
We've got all kinds of celebrations tonight. Woohoo! Yeah. What I have to report is that I made it to 2 of my liaison schools. I've got one more to go, which is the Explorer Academy, but I did get to Lewis and Clark. Got to visit with Jason Cressup, and I spent a lot of time with Stacy Anderson in her gifted services area. She's fabulous. There is so much good that's going on in our schools. October 16th, I spent the morning with them. Then I went to Davies because I have a graduating senior, so I had a meeting there, and then went to Fargo South in the afternoon and had a really good meeting with Dr. Birch as well. So one more to go, but I will be at the state board meeting as well. And so congratulations, you guys. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. Greg?
No major life events for me to report. I did attend planning committee and the negotiations session and follow-up that I'm happy to report resulted in a 2-year contract. Health insurance committee met last week. That committee is still doing pretty well, and as a reminder to anyone watching, open enrollment starts. So make sure you check out HR website to make sure you get the best benefit elections for yourself, including health insurance, which is making a change this year away from the traditional co-pay structure to 2 different high deductible options. And then, Bismarck later this week for NDSBA.
Greg, may I interject? When you said make your deductions, I want to make it clear the board does not qualify for health insurance.
Correct, yes. That's what, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody watching that isn't on the board and is a eligible employee of the district, if you have questions about your eligibility, ask Dr. McKenna.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Katie?
Thanks. On October 11th, I observed as the FEA and negotiations committee met for their final session. This past weekend, I also, not officially in my board capacity, but I attended the North Dakota LGBTQ Summit, which was really quite fascinating to just learn more about the well-being of our LGBTQ youth in this state. And then this morning I watched some of the special session as there was some discussion about a topic that could have potentially influenced or impacted us, and it was really fortunate to see that fail. And then I'm off to the conference with you all on Thursday.
Great, thank you so much, Katie. I do not have very much. I think negotiations has been mentioned and planning has been mentioned. I had a calendar committee meeting last week, and we are going to be presenting a calendar to the board at an upcoming meeting. So that was nice to have it wrapped up with the needed changes. During governance, there's just something that I wanted to share that could potentially impact us. We had discussed how much information cabinet should share regarding bids that come to us through the consent agenda. And we sort of came to the conclusion that if when you receive your agenda, there's questions or that you have to reach out rather than put the burden on cabinet to be supplying us with which could be a lot of information. So that for now is how we're going to handle any questions related to bid packets. And I'm happy to chat if you have any questions. And then I had a really nice meeting with the school psychologists last week, which was really productive, and I was very grateful for their time. And then I'm going to be in Bismarck, weather providing, tomorrow through Friday. So that's all. Seth, I'm assuming we don't need an executive session unless you
You
want to
are
do one for
so
funsies.
correct,
Okay.
yes.
Great. So our next regular meeting date, it will be on November 14th. It's 6:48 and we are adjourned.